Welcome to this Aztlander presentation, the Underwater Panther Serpent Iconography and Meaning from Ancient Eastern North America to the Mississippian World, with Michael Ruggeri, who is Professor Emeritus with the City Colleges of Chicago and moderator of the oldest Mesoamerican listserv on the web, Aztland.
Okay, I want to say hello to everybody. Thanks for joining me on this talk on the iconography of the Mississippian Underwater Panther. And on your screen right now, you're seeing a map on the left of the extent of the Mississippian culture across North America. And as you can see, there's a huge swatch, dark brown, lower right corner, um, that would encompass what they call the Southeast Ceremonial Complex, the SEC. And then right above it in orange, the middle Mississippian region, largely Illinois and Indiana and Missouri. Down at the gray spot at the center bottom, the Plaquemine culture, really part of the SEC. And then over to the east, the Fort Ancient culture, which is vaguely related to the Mississippian culture in some ways. And what you don't see on this map is the Hopewell interaction sphere culture, which is larger than the Fort Ancient, goes much further east and around to the west of it, and in which you're going to see in this lecture that I give you definite ties between the Mississippian culture and the Hopewellian culture and the Fort Ancient culture in terms of the underwater panther of the Mississippian realm. So that's the extent geographically of this whole story of the iconography of the underwater panther and his domain. And I want to point out that the underwater panther is the second most important deity in the entire Mississippian culture, the most important being the Birdman, and they are in conflict with one another. And so I gave a lecture to another group earlier on the Birdman, and if this goes well, I'll give another lecture on the Birdman to the Aztlander group. And on the right is a drawing of the Mississippian cosmic vision, the cosmo world of the Mississippian people. And this was drawn by the greatest Mississippian iconographer ever, F. Kent Riley III, who recently departed us, unfortunately. And so here he has a pretty detailed description of the way Native Americans in the Mississippian realm and further east would have viewed the cosmos. So in the middle of the cosmos, you see the pole, that striped pole that goes from the top all the way up to the sky and down to the bottom, way down at the bottom, the striped pole, and the world tree. And so that world tree or stripe pole connects all three elements, all three levels of the universe, the above world, this world, and the underworld. So Native Americans saw our realm in the universe as these three levels. Now, in terms of the gods that you're looking at in the above world, you see on the left the feathered serpent. That's one of the guises of the underwater panther. So the underwater panther has three guises in this particular Mississippian realm explanation of his iconography. The underwater panther iconography, the feathered serpent iconography of the above world, and the great serpent of our world. So three different evolutions of the underwater panther. I'll be explaining that as we go forward. And over on the right of the tree, you see the Birdman, who's the creator god, the most important god in the Mississippian realm. You see on the left there a hand with an eye in it. That's the eye and hand, or the hand and eye symbolism that I will discuss later. And then right above, in our world, you see the serpents, antlered serpents with the bare fanged teeth coming out of the ground from the underworld. And then below our world is the watery realm, Native Americans believed that our entire Earth was floating on a watery realm. And there you see, right under our Earth, the underwater panther, who's the god of the underworld realm, the lord of the underworld realm. And below that, you see down at the bottom the starry sky, which is part of the underworld realm. And I'll discuss that with you as we go forward. And then you have a female at the very bottom, and she would be the Earth Mother Goddess. Now, in terms of those cross symbols at the top, you see a flowery cross, a petaled cross, and anytime you see that petaled cross or flowery cross, that represents the above world, except sometimes because the above world and the underworld are connected, it conveys both, and I'll explain that later. And then at our level, the Earth, you see just the plain cross, the four corners of the universe cross, they might say. And then at the underrealm, you see the swirled cross or the swastika cross. Anytime you see that cross, that represents the underworld realm. So this iconography is constant and collated and connected all through the Mississippian realm, all the way from Oklahoma up into Canada, all through the middle of North America, down into the Southeast ceremonial complex. You have the same symbolism occurring and reoccurring over and over again. Now, the three cultures that are going to be spoken about today, the Adena culture, the Hopewell culture, and the four cultures, the fourth ancient culture and the Mississippian world. These are the dates. So the first culture in North America that began building pyramids and large monumental structures were the Adena people. And their dates are 500 BCE to 100 CE, and mostly in the Ohio River Valley, but they extended in some cases over into neighboring states. And then, when they disappeared from the scene, you have the Hopewell culture, much larger culture that extended from 200 BCE to 500 CE. And again, mostly centered in Ohio, but again, spreading out across a very wide area, all the way to the east of New York and all the way to the west, Kansas. And then the Four Nation culture, which is contemporaneous with the Mississippian culture. And that's why it's connected in that way. And their dates 1000 CE to 1750 CE. And again, in the Ohio River Valley and spreading out into several other states that are near it. And then the Mississippian world, which was from 800 CE to 1600 CE, which is that huge area of North America that you saw on the map. And down below on this slide, you see the great city, the Monk's Mound Pyramid at Cahokia, Cahokia being sort of the capital of the Mississippian world, the largest site that the Mississippian world ever constructed. So those are the four cultures that the underwater panther, the great serpent, the feathered serpent would be found. Now, in terms of the astronomical cosmos of the underwater serpent or the underwater panther, Native Americans were studying the skies, and they saw the constellation Antares, which is on the left, as you can see. And as you can see, it's curved, looks like a snake. And then at the front of the slide here, of the constellation, you see sort of a reddish star, and that's the red star Antares. And that's believed to be, if you get through the various obstacles when you die, going to your final underworld resting spot, that would be the spot where you would rest, the red star Antares. And so Native Americans would look at that constellation as a symbol of the path you would have to take on the path of souls through the Milky Way galaxy and onto this path of stars in the constellation here to your final resting place in the realm of the dead. And the red star then is the eye of the serpent. And in late winter, early spring, it sits very low on the Milky Way, so it's always there. And so when you die, the underwater panther or the great serpent is your guide. And as your guide, he takes you on the path of souls, it's called, to the death, to the realm of death. And you will meet the underwater panther there, who is the realm of death. Now, a lot of this iconography that we'll be talking about today emanates from the very large site of Moundville in Georgia. And here you see a photograph of some of the mounds, the platform mounds at Moundville, where you have the greatest production of underwater serpent imagery, carved on stone, on copper, on ceramics, engraved on their Hemp Hill style pottery. And so we're going to see a lot of those artifacts today in my lecture. And then one of the stone discs that was found at Moundville, the third slide here, the third photo at the top, you see the underwater panther as a rattlesnake, as two coiled rattlesnakes, and in the center, you see the hand and eye, or the eye and hand symbolism, and that represents the eye of the eye and hand, the path that you go through on the way, on the Milky Way path, on your way to the realm of the dead. And then the fourth photo here, all the way to the right from Moundville, another artifact showing you the hand and eye symbolism there at the bottom of this artifact. There's the symbolism of the eye going out through the Milky Way galaxy, the hand that it exists in, and then above here, the swirling cross. Remember, the swirling cross is a symbol of the underworld. And that's where you come to at the end of your journey, to the realm of death in the underworld. So that's why they're connected. Now, I want to go through some of the main symbolism here. The iconography of the underwater panther. The first two photos here at the top are artistic renderings from shell engravings at the Spiro site in Oklahoma, one of the larger sites in the Mississippian world in Oklahoma. And here you have the feathered serpent, and the feathered serpents, four of them, are spinning around, revolving around the center cross here. And the center cross, as you see, is not feathered, nor is it swirling. So they're swirling around this earth. And then you have in the second slide here, the underwater serpent, the underwater panther, four of them again. And again, some of the symbolism of this underwater panther, the protruding tongue, the long tail, the clawed feet. In the center, you see this little pink thing, which would be the eye that you go through to get on the path of the Milky Way to get to the realm of death. So that's what that represents. And then on the face of the underwater panther, you see these blue marks, and those are eye folds, and they're either going to be 1, 2, or 3 folds, and depending on how many folds there are, they would represent this earth, the underworld realm, or the cosmos. So depending on how many eye folds, on bends in the eye folds the underwater panther has, this tells you where that underwater panther belongs. And as you can see, they're spinning around the feathered cross, which is a cosmic symbol, the sky world, the above world symbol. And then the third photo here is the Oji motif, as it is called. And once again, now you're familiar with that. That's the eye in that hand, and it is the portal to the underworld on the path through the Milky Way galaxy to the realm of the dead. And then the fourth photo, you have the feathered cross, the feathered cross with the swirling, the swastika cross, representing, again, both the above world in some cases and the below world, the underworld in other cases. And then the one I showed you, the fourth photo, the fifth photo here, is the hand and eye with the underwater panther surrounding it. And then finally, this disc that was found in Texas, and you have the fight between the underworld panther and the thunderbird. The thunderbird would be a representation of the bird god, the most important god in the Mesoamerican realm, and they are in conflict with one another, sort of like Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl in the Mesoamerican world. They represent the world of light and dark, of harmony and disharmony, of night and day, the above world and below world. And so a universal conflict that the Native American people would see, keeping the entire world in a balance between these two very human and earthly things, the fight between good and evil, right and wrong, harmony and disharmony. And then finally, the last photo you see here is the underwater serpent with his eye folds, and he's got a forked eye, they call it, and two forks would mean that he's part of the watery realm. Now, one of the main ways in which the underwater panther was shown in ceramics in the Mississippian world was with what are called effigy pipes. And as you can see, there's 4 pretty good representations of these effigy pipes in the photos I'm showing you. One from the Mississippi Valley, one from Arkansas, one from the Man site in Indiana, and another one from Pennsylvania. So you can see that these effigy pipes stretch out across the entire breadth of North America, from the East Coast all the way over to Oklahoma. They're made mostly of limestone and sandstone. They're not used by most people if they're this well carved. Shamans would use these. They would find a master craftsman to make beautiful effigy pipes like this for their shamanistic purposes. They would put tobacco or other kinds of psychedelic drugs into the pipes and light them up, inhale, and imbibe the psychedelic and tobacco smoke coming out of them, and take a trip to the underworld to become familiar with the underwater panther and share in rituals with one another across a wide area of the Mississippian world. So as this effigy pipe ritual and practice spread, the idea of the shamans using these effigy pipes for psychedelic trips, for vision quests and so on, spread with them. So whether you were in Oklahoma or whether you were in Pennsylvania, you had the same idea of the shaman using these beautifully crafted effigy pipes to take vision quests through the use of psychedelic drugs. And along with the shamans doing this, they brought around them groups of folks that were attracted to these particular shaman. And you would have the beginning of religious sodalities, they're called. And these sodalities would be either kinship groups, clan groups, or simply independent religious groups, depending on the place that they reside in across the Mississippian realm. And they would share in these rituals with the shaman. So out of these effigy pipes, you have many variations of the rituals and practices of these sodalities, these kinship groups, these clan groups, centered around the shaman and centered on these effigy pipes. And so it's a very symbolic, religious, very Mississippian-centered kind of idea that led to this great artwork. Now, there are pipes that are kind of crude, not quite as artistic as these, that just regular folks would use to smoke tobacco. People always ask about what kind of tobacco would be psychedelic. Well, they selected out tobacco leaves in Mesoamerica and also here in the Mississippian realm to be ultra strong in strength, so that they would give give you sort of a psychedelic high. And they also had marijuana as well. And the photo down below on the right, you see a series of underwater panther effigy pipes that are called Beller style pipes. And you find this style of Beller style pipe all through what is called the lower Mississippi Valley, the LMV area of the Mississippian world. Another very fancy kind of ceramic that was created for the underwater panther were these bowls. Very fancy bowls, well crafted. You can see from the photos above, one from Northeast Arkansas, one from Arkansas, one from Moundville, Friends Mound in Arkansas, the Lee Group in Mississippi, Campbell Group in Missouri, and the Denton Group in Missouri. And these were used by elites only, again, made by master craftsmen. And some of the bowls that you find that are much cruder would have been used by regular families. They would store things in here, perhaps seeds, other kinds of food, things of that nature, maybe important jewelry. But the most important ones, like the ones you see above, would be used by elites. And anytime you see the swirls here, like you see in the first photo, and over here on the sixth photo, that represents the watery realm. So we're talking about the underworld panther in the underworld there. And again, these underwater swirls, these panther swirls, these watery swirls would be used by the shaman to teach their adherents and the folks in their clan group or their kinship group about the Milky Way, the path of the Milky Way to the underworld. And because the Mississippian world, of course, it was a world where lots of earthquakes, tornadoes, floods, storms, the underwater panther was a indication, a showing of that kind of violent world, of the storms, the tornadoes, the lightning, the earthquakes, the floods, and so on. So it was, for the most part, a very malevolent creature. And that's why it is shown as a panther with snarling teeth, with this large snout, with clawed limbs. And when you took a trip across water, you would always try to placate the underwater panther, because otherwise your boat might be capsized, or the underwater panther would rise up out of the water and eat you alive. And so there was a symbolic relationship between Native Americans and this underwater panther anytime they came into contact with any water, especially when they're crossing this water, to try to give offerings to stay on the good side of the underwater panther and to placate the underwater panther. And so, as you can see, these panther bowls are spread across a very wide realm. So you can see the connection religiously between the entire Mississippian world, the Adena world, and the Hopewell world, all the way from Texas, all the way to New York, in terms of this North American ideology and iconography. Another kind of ceramic were these swirly red and white underwater panther ceramics. Some of them very well made. So you can see two of them from Quapaw, Arkansas. The Quapaw were a late pre-colonial and early colonial tribal group that created a lot of these swirling red and white underwater panther ceramics. And then you see two from Rose Mound in Arkansas. This was late pre-colonial ceramic site. And what did these red and white swirly underwater panthers represent? As you can see, they are like pipes, and perhaps folks use them to store seeds or liquid of some kind. So that's what the spouts are about. That's what the hole is about. On the top of the second photo there, you see from Rose Mound. It's this kind of swirly red and white ceramic is, again, universal. Everyone made this in the Mississippian world. All cultures made the same type of ceramic. So the style spread through trade networks and through religious networks through the entire realm. Again, the whole idea of the Native American world contrasting day and night, peace and war, male and female, everything in the Mesoamerican world and in this Native American world in North America, pre-colonial world of North America, is about duality. And so these ceramics are, these red and white swirly ceramics are part of this idea of duality. And of course, the swirls would always represent water. And of course, they're underwater panthers. And so that's why you would see swirls on this style of ceramic of the underwater panther. Now, there were also these incised pots, as you can see, some of them pretty ornate. The one on the left from Southeast Missouri, from a group of light ceramics that are like each other, the Berry Site group, as it was called. And as you can see, the one on the left is the face of the underwater panther with the forked eye, his jutting tongue, his snarling mouth, and the swirling around everything representing the underwater panther's watery realm. And here on the right, you see a collection from these hemp-hill style winged serpents that are related to the constellation Scorpio that I talked about, and as the path of the Milky Way to Antares, the final resting place, the realm of the dead, on the path of souls. And as you can see on this hemp-hill pottery, there's the feathered serpent with his tri-forked eye, representing the cosmic realm. Here again is the feathered serpent, cosmic, and again, tri-forked eye, cosmic, protruding tongue, bared fangs on this particular pot. So this was a style of pottery that was indicative of showing the feathered serpent in the sky, the one that would guide you on the path of the Milky Way galaxy to your final resting place. And as you can see, it turns into some pretty great incised art on Mississippian pottery. Another thing they did in terms of this underwater panther art was these beaten down and flattened copper plates, again, done with pretty great artistic expression. These beaten copper plates were created between 800 and 1600 CE, which is the entire breadth of the Mississippian world. And they're found, as you can see, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, and Mississippi, across the entire Mississippian realm. So they all made these beaten copper plates. And where did they get the copper? Well, some of them were from the Great Lakes, others from all the way to the Appalachian Mountains, and then near the Etowah site in Alabama, there was some copper. So the copper trade began way back in the Archaic period from 3000 to 1000 BCE. And the way they did this is they alternately heated up the copper, let it get cold again, heated it up again until it became very pliable using wood fire. And then once it was more pliable, they hammered the sheets into very flat pieces and then shape these flat pieces into the artworks that you're looking at now. And so as you can see, the incised being that you're looking at on these flat copper plates is, as you know now, the underwater panther with his bared fangs, his eye surrounds. And the green one was made at the Hollywood site in Georgia, again with a 3-point eye surround representing the cosmic realm, the path of the Milky Way. And then the orange one is from the Hiwassee site in Tennessee, a three-pronged eye surround again, which means, he's meeting you and guiding you on the path of the Milky Way, through the cosmos to the realm of the dead. He's your guide. And as you can see, he has a furrowed brow, his bulbous snout, large canines and whiskers, and probably this same template was used in both of these hammered copper plates. So this template was traded around from place to place and used as a model, as a template to beat the copper into these shapes of the feathered serpent, the sky serpent, your guide through the Milky Way path to the realm of the dead. Talk a little bit about this well-known phenomena of what's called the Piasa bird, the Piasa underwater panther. And it's an interesting story, and it's an interesting artistic piece as well. It was found by French explorers in 1760 on this basalt stone ledge, and it has been worn down through the centuries since 1670. Luckily, there was a drawing by the discoverer of this first drawing by the Native Americans, perhaps as early as 400 CE or so. And so from that drawing, folks remodeled on top of that drawing clearer and more colorful renditions of that original. So what you see now is a reworked version of that original over many centuries and many times. But because we have that original drawing, it's pretty close to what the original looked like. And so here you see on the left a close-up of that Piasa bird. And again, you can see clearly that it's the underwater panther, the fangs, it's antlered, the clawed feet, and feathered tail there. And if you happen to be in Alton, Illinois, you can see it right there on the cliffside. They have a fence in front of it, easily, I'm afraid, altered if they're not careful about somebody getting up there and putting graffiti or something on it. But again, because it's feathered, it's the sky version of the underwater panther, the feathered serpent. And again, your guide on the Milky Way path of the dead to the realm of the dead, the realm of the underworld. And finally, the third photo above, you're seeing a shell design that was found. It's a drawing of a shell design on a shell found at Spiro Mounds with the underwater panther, this time with a human head, but the human head has a protruding tongue. So what would that be about? Well, it turns out that in some of the historical era tribes, there is a myth, a folktale about a human female mating with the underwater panther. And the offspring would have both human and panther characteristics. And so this drawing on the shell from Spiro Mounds would be a very early example of that myth told by historical tribes today, of the mating between the human female and the underwater panther. So, and again, you can see it's sort of like the idea of this Piasa that you see, the Piasa bird that you see painted at Alton, Illinois, and repainted several times ever since, but pretty close to the original in terms of the general artistic symbolism and style of it. Now, we find the underwater panther in several places from Canada down to Missouri, across the Great Plains. The first one here on the left is the historical tribe called this creature, the underwater panther, Mishipeshu. or Mishu Peshi, depending on the tribe. And this particular drawing of the spiked panther god was found at the Agawa rock site in Lake Superior Provincial Park in Ontario, Canada. So this idea of the underwater panther, the panther god, spreads all the way up to Ontario. And the historical tribe that lives in this Ontario area is the Oneota tribe. And so members, very early members of the Oneota tribe painted this around 1849. And as you can see, there's the spiked panther, and then underneath it, you see the serpents. So you see the connection between this panther above and the serpents below. And then this drawing here, this rock painting here, is meant to be a canoe with several folks paddling the canoe, getting up close to the panther and the serpents, the snakes. And the second rock painting you see here was found at a great site of rock art called Picture Cave in Missouri. And this cave was Mississippian realm painted, rock painting from 800 to 1100 CE. The rock paintings in this cave emanate from in terms of time. They're contemporaneous with the great site of Cahokia. They're in Missouri, like Cahokia, not too far from Cahokia. And there are other rock art paintings in this site, a picture cave, that are Cahokia-like. And as you can see from this particular underwater panther painting at Picture Cave, Missouri, you have the fangs, you have the eyes of the protruding eyes of the underwater panther. And what's worn away here is the body of the panther in Picture Cave. And then all the way over to Nebraska has been found this Winnebago tribe underwater serpent, a pictograph that was carved in Nebraska in historical times. You see the horns, the spines, the tail, the hooves of this panther, all the way in Nebraska. And then figure 4, you have another underwater panther with a bunch of canoes following it, and the serpent down below at Darby Lake in Ontario that would have been painted by the Oneota tribe in historical times. So you have, again, the underwater panther shown in these rock art paintings that you find all the way from Nebraska to Missouri to Ontario, Canada. Now, we move to the Adena, Hopewell, for an ancient world, to the emanation of the underwater serpent shown in the Adena, Hopewell for an ancient world as a serpent. And the most famous of the effigy mounds in this world is at Serpent Mound in Ohio, as you can see from this photo from above. This effigy mound is shaped, was created as a serpent-looking creature. And at the end, you have this oval shape. And underneath the oval shape here, you have sort of a fork holding this oval shape in what you might say is his mouth. And so this is Serpent Mound in Ohio. It's 1,340 feet long effigy head. Its head is directly aligned with the sun at the summer solstice, and it's about 1,000 years old. Now, there's been some argument about who actually built Serpent Mound among these cultures in the east, the Adena, the Hopewell, or the Fort Ancient. The Fort Ancient, the Adena material is found here. They did DNA testing of some of the elements in the effigy mound, and they found that it corresponded with Adena, very early Adena times. But then they also found DNA from the Hopewell and from the Fornation culture. And because most of the DNA is from ancient times, and because the Adena DNA is not from organic material, it's from organic material, not from wood materials. There's some argument about whether there's any Adena DNA in this anyway, but it's pretty certain now that the Fort Ancient culture sculpted this serpent mount. Now, as I was finishing up this lecture, I happened to find a photo over here on the right of something that looks very much like that serpent mound in Ohio on the left. As you can see, it's snake-like, and then at the end of it, you have the forked symbolism here that looks like it's holding this round object. So it certainly looks like the exact same iconographical idea as Serpent Mound in Ohio, all the way over in Wichita, Kansas. And this particular construction was created around 1400 CE. Serpent Mound around 1000 CE. So whether travelers from the Serpent Mound area made it all the way to Kansas, or whether there was this idea of this same serpent that spread religiously from group to group from Ohio to Kansas, here you have this, surprising to me because I never knew about it until I started finishing up this lecture and found it, this similar idea to the one in Ohio from 1000 CE. Now, there is a Mississippian connection, and we're talking about the underwater panther and the serpents of the Mississippian world. And the archaeologist that is best known for making this Mississippian connection of the great serpent to the Mississippian realm was Brett Lapper. And I'm going to be talking about how he connects the great serpent here, the effigy mound of the great serpent, to the Mississippian realm in my next slide, in my next page. So the egg is probably representing the Earth Mother, and the Earth Mother I showed you in that cosmic realm from the first page, down at the bottom of the world tree, the Earth Mother that on top of which everything else sits. And so this particular image here and here probably represents the egg, which represents the Earth Mother. Now, Brett Lapper was looking at all of the ways in which you could connect the Mississippian world to the Hopewellian world, and the connection between Serpent Mound and the great panther, the underwater panther in the Mississippian realm. And so he shows us 5 examples of the connection between the underwater panther and the serpent of the Mississippian realm and the Hopewellian world. So in figure 1 from the site of Cahokia, you see what's called the Berger figurine. And it is a figurine of the Earth Mother, who the Cahokians call the woman who never dies. And she has the great serpent on her back. And Brad Lepper would say that that great serpent is the serpent that you see as that great effigy mound in Ohio, represents the same serpent. In figure 2, this was found in this particular ceramic was found in Virginia. It's a kneeling chunky player, the game that the Mississippians played throughout the Mississippian realm. And this particular chunky player, again, like the Berger figurine, has the underwater serpent on its back. And again, this underwater serpent very much stylized like the great serpent mound in Ohio. Figure 3 It's a pipe, an effigy pipe, the Vogue pipe, it's called, and it's from Ohio, and it's a kneeling figurine, and it's got the great serpent on its back. So you have the Burger figurine with a serpent on its back. You have this Virginia figurine with a serpent on its back. You have this Vogue pipe from Virginia with a serpent on its back. And then in historical times, there's a peyote ceremony of the Osage people of Missouri. And here is a representation by the Osage, artistic representation by the Osage of this ceremony. And as you can see, here's you have what looks like the vulva of the Earth Mother. You have, and that vulva faces north, like the serpent mound. You have the serpent, the underwater serpent. And above here, this creature that looks kind of like a frog, but in parturition pose, birth pose. So the great mother, the Earth Mother, is giving birth to the serpent and through her vulva. So that's how Brad Lepper interprets this, and it certainly looks like what he's interpreting is correct. And then finally, in the Picture 4 was from Picture Cave. I'm sorry, Picture 4 was from Picture Cave in Missouri, Mississippian. So not from the Osage, but that's I've explained what it's about. And then I meant Figure 5 is the Osage peyote ceremony. Again, with the vulva facing north, just like Serpent Mound. They had a wood fire burning in the middle in this peyote ceremony. And there you have the example of the egg at the front, just like the Serpent Mound in Ohio. So all of these are related, all looking like a Mississippian Hopewellian connection all the way up into the historical period with the Osage in Missouri. And then finally, Serpent Mound. Sorry about the mix up with the Picture Cave in Figure 4. And then finally, there's another effigy mound. There's two effigy mounds in the Hopewellian world. The second one is called Alligator Mound, but that was called Alligator Mound when they found it by the French explorers. And the French explorers did not know about the underwater panther or the underwater serpent, and it looked to them like an alligator, and so they called it the Alligator Mound. And that name has stuck, even though it's not really Alligator Mound. And it's about 250 feet long. It was 6 feet high at one time. It's now worn down to almost nothing. You have to be able to see it from the sky to make the outlines of it on the very bare, flat ground. But this is what it would look like when it was 6 feet high. And there was a small mound at the center, as you can see from this drawing. It was believed that there was some kind of a mound here in the center of it. And radiocarbon dating by Brad Lepper dates this alligator mound to around 950 CE. And it's about the same time as Serpent Mound was constructed at 1000 CE by the Fort Ancient culture. So that's what I have for you today. The explanation of the underwater panther and the realm of the Mississippians and how it spread to the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient cultures in the East, and all of its various guises artistically through its ceramics, its pottery, its religion, its sodalities, its kinship groups, and all of the strong elements of who this great panther, this underwater panther, represents. So, all right, I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you, Michael. I don't see any questions. I've asked people to put their questions in the chat. That was a very interesting talk. And you mentioned a few things I was not aware of, and a couple of people have made comments. Steve Bean says this presentation fills a lot of holes for me. And Roger says he's just getting familiar with the Mississippian and Hopewell, and he had no idea of these beliefs for them, which seem more like Mexico. This is a terrific lesson. Also, if folks, if you want to notice, Brad Lepper did a Zoom talk about the Serpent Mound a couple of years for us, and I've added in that link over in the chat feature. Alana says thanks. She learned a lot of new things. Thanks for highlighting the serpent site. Is there anybody that wants to unmute and ask a question directly?
Anyone?
I'll ask one.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, this is Dale. How you doing today?
How you? Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your passion that you always have for this topic. I very much enjoyed how you brought together multiple strands of data from sort of archaeological sites and material culture. Most of my work is done in the Pacific, and we've battled back against diffusionism because sometimes it takes away from things like agency or individual aberrations in the record. Is there another theoretical orientation that you could use that might give you different interpretations about all of your data?
On this particular deity, it would be hard to find another explanation. I think you can see the fusion clearly in terms of what I laid out for you today and described to you today. Whether or not any of this was independently created, you could look at the Great Serpent and the Hopewell Serpent and come to the conclusion that it has nothing to do with the Underwater Panther, the Underwater Serpent of the Mississippian world, but it just perhaps a reflection of snakes in their world. But as I showed you from the work of Brad Lepwell, he shows a very clear connection between the serpents in the Hopewellian world and the serpents in the Mississippian world. So, no, I cannot see a non-connection in any of the things that the pipes all very similar across the entire realm, as you saw. The bowls, the panther bowls, very similar across the entire realm, from east to west. The same style, the same iconography, the same kinds of bowls, the same kinds of pipes, the same kinds of swirling red and white underwater panther ceramics. So they're all pretty much tied together. It would be pretty hard to say that something as far away from Oklahoma to New York, you would find a red and white swirling underwater panther ceramic. I mean, obviously not independently created as an idea. So Dale, that's my answer.
Thanks, boss man. I appreciate that. I just was curious on if you've sort of pondered that idea, to make your argument even stronger, to try to find other interpretations such as agency or some maybe post-processionalist view, just to better, strengthen your. I definitely saw it. I saw a lot of the connections and the symbolism and some of the description. So I was just curious if you've done that exercise. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale, for the question.
Hey, Michael, Celeste is asking, why did some effigy bowls have a rattle head?
Yeah, there seems to be, as you saw in all of the art, a connection between rattlesnake imagery and underwater panther imagery. There's a lot of rattlesnakes, of course, in their realm, in the Mississippian realm, and so and it's a pretty fierce creature. And so they seem to amalgamate rattlesnakes with the panther and with the serpent in a lot of their iconography. But a lot of times they're fused. Sometimes, for instance, the plate that you saw with the hand and eye symbolism surrounded by the dual feathered serpents. And those feathered serpents are definitely rattlesnakes, but they're surrounding the Oji motif, the hand and eye motif. So they're obviously, although they're rattlesnakes, they're directly related to the idea of the underwater panther.
Okay.
Hope I answered that question.
Does anybody else have a question?
I do. Hey, Mike, it's Dan. Thanks
Hi,
for the
Dan.
talk. Wonderful. I was wondering, have you ever looked at Carl Dilg's lizard effigy mound in Lakeview, the drawing that Carl or Charles Dilg did back in the early 1900s?
Remind me what the effigy was.
All right, so in Lakeview, it's I forget the cross streets. I have it in my notes somewhere from years ago. There was a lizard mound, and it was roughly, as he noted, about 70 paces in length. Anyway, it was it's obviously it's been destroyed since. It's now an L station or an L track, but
Oh yeah, I saw that because now you're saying the track, and I remember seeing that a photo of that from. You reminded me it's near a track.
yeah, so everyone interprets it as a lizard. I've been thinking about this for years, and I'm not going to say I'm the only one. I'm sure other people have too. But personally, I think that's an image of the water panther. I don't think it's an actual lizard. I mean, it could be a salamander of sorts, but when you actually look at the image itself, it's got two flaps, not legs, but flaps. And I do know that between this and the misinterpreted alligator mound, in fact, it kind of has the same tail as the alligator mound. And then there's a little side mound that comes out of the top of it. Dilg's lizard mound. So I think that's an actual interpretation of the water panther, but I can't find anything about it being a water panther because, you know, Dilg took these notes, Dilg drew the image, and everyone calls it a lizard. Like I said, I'm not saying I'm the only person to have interpreted it like this, but I can't find anybody else who has interpreted the image as being a panther.
Do you have a date on that particular effigy mound?
Yeah, it's somewhere around the early 1900s. I'll have to go back again and look at my Carl Dilg stuff. I know that Scharf placed it on one of his maps, but he really doesn't talk about it. He didn't draw it. You know, he didn't sketch it. Dilg sketched everything, as well as, you know, took notes. Scharf just took notes, and here and there he might have drawn an image, but nothing to the likes of what Dilg used to do. I do have images of. I could email it to you, so at least you can see it.
In what state?
Oh, it's here in Chicago, Lakeview.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or it was. You know, now it's an elevated track with apartments and condos and everything else around it. Yeah, it's long gone. But I thought it interesting, and I thought it one of the only representations of something like that up here in the Chicagoland area. I mean,
And
with
do we know the
urbanization.
tribal group that it perhaps?
I'm sorry?
Do we know the tribal group that created it was the Osage?
Oh no, this is prehistoric. Yeah, so this is probably it could have been anything from woodland to early Mississippian. I don't know the specific group that would have built it, though. You know, their descent group. So Dill wouldn't have known these things. He just took notes, made sketches. So
Very well may be related to this whole idea.
yeah, I mean, it is, you know, not far from Lake Michigan. So
Right.
But anyway, there it is, my friend.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Any other questions?
Soaring Bear comments that the mounds might be smaller than the Maya, but the ceramics quality shows they were not subsistence. I'm not sure that's the right word, but he also says one image that you showed had the panther separate from the serpent. And when are they separate and when merged?
I think that you would have to look at each site and each era to see, exactly when the serpent and the panther were separated from one another. But if you look at the slide that I have up now, obviously in the middle realm, our realm, you have, according to F. Kent Riley's iconographic drawing of the Native American cosmos, pre-colonial and colonial, there are serpents, and then in the underworld is the underwater panther. And so I think that probably, as I'm thinking about it, if you see the serpent and the underwater panther, and they're separate, we're talking about showing both realms, the earthly realm and the underworld realm. And that's only a guess. And that's the best I can come up with as to how they got separated or why they're separated, or exactly when and if a separation actually occurred, or whether folks who looked at this imagery of the serpent and the panther just saw in their mind the combination of the two. I mean, we'd have to be able to see, like with all iconographical symbolism from ancient times, sometimes it's very hard to discern what they were seeing from what we see. Isn't that true? And so there you are.
All right. Well, Marilyn says, thank you so much. She's never seen a program on this topic. And Michael, I investigated it, and it looks like in the email notices about your program that I sent out last Thursday night, when I copied and pasted the Zoom link, all of the ones that were in the link were changed to slashes, which in more than 4 years of doing these Zooms, I've never seen that happen, but I'll have to keep an eye out for that in the future. There were at least 3 ones in the link, and they were all changed to slashes. So thank you, folks that found it either back in the Michael's HTML version of the Aztlander or the Aztlander. You made it in, so thank you all.
Thank you for everybody coming and listening to me and relating to this lecture.
And just to let people know, I'll be putting the program link in the upcoming May Aztlander. And Michael, your previous Aztlander program has gotten more than 2,400 views on our Aztlander channel. So we'll get a lot of mileage out of your program.
I hope so.
Yeah. All right. Well, if nobody has any more questions, thank you, Michael. And I'll end the Zoom now.
Thanks, Jim.
All righty. Take care. Thanks for watching this Aztlander presentation. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To subscribe to free monthly issues of the Aztlander, Magazine of the Americas, contact your host, Jim Reed, at jimreedmaya@gmail.com. Thanks again.